Welcome to the Women Who Change the World podcast, the place where everyday women world changers share their stories to inspire, challenge, and equip you to change your world. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Women Who Change the World. I am here with my friend Misty, and we're going to be talking about women and dealing with abusive relationships. I have to be honest with you guys. I had a lot of people that I interviewed in October, and I have a journal that I keep notes in. So I'm flipping through my journal. I'm like, okay, I know I've talked to her. What did we talk about? And then I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay, this is going to go deep. It's going to go hard, and it's going to go fast. You may not think that you're in an abusive relationship. You may not think that the person you're with, whether you're married to them or they're just your partner, are abusive, but we all have patterns in life. And especially if you grew up in an abusive environment, it's very likely that you are with somebody who is abusive. So we're going to get into that today. I'm a little nervous. I'm a little nervous. Misty's like, it's going to be great. I'm like, I know it's going to be great, but it's like, whoa. When you get those hard, deep conversations, it's impactful. It's impactful, and I can't find my tissues, so we'll see where we go from here. If I start crying, just, ignore me. How are you today, Misty?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I am good. I am excited. I am excited about this. So tell us about your story.
Well, I was kind of in that phase of not really knowing that I was in an abusive relationship, which is interesting because my background is in social work, right? So it doesn't discriminate. Even if you know that you're supposed to know the signs, you may not know them because once you're in it, you're too close to it to be able to see it. I like to use the analogy of a picture within a frame. Like we are the two-dimensional picture inside that frame, and we only see what's directly in front of us. And it's hard to see the full 360 picture. So I just knew that it was tough. I knew that the 9 years that we had been married was pure hell for me, that we couldn't get along, that I was like, I am an easy to get along with person. Like, why are we always fighting? It just did not make any sense to me. I had done 9 years of self-development work, 9 years of going to counseling, getting books saying, what I was doing wrong and how to fix me and how to fix what I'm thinking and what I'm doing. And I was at a conference with a coworker, and she heard him talking to me on the phone, and she said, Misty, like, that is not normal. The way he's talking to you, no one should be talked to that way. And she said, that is emotional abuse. And it was like a light bulb went off in my head where I was like, wow, that makes so much sense. And it was such a simple statement, right? And it was just one conversation that she heard, but that one statement and that one conversation that she heard completely changed my life forever, because I began to recognize it and I began to tell him what needed to be changed and how it needed to be changed. And I gave him time to do that, but it just wasn't in our cards to change. And so one of the things I work with women on is that we think that once we leave that relationship, it's going to be sunshine and daisies and everything's going to be amazing and beautiful and wonderful because that person is gone. But that is not what happens, because we get conditioned to living in that environment, to walking on eggshells every single day, to becoming a chameleon, being who they need us to be in every situation, that we forget who we are, one. And two, our bodies get addicted to the hormones that are produced and the chemicals that are produced when we are in the state of fight or flight in those situations, day in and day out. So we get out and we think it's going to be sunshine and daisies, but our body is addicted to those chemicals, right? So it's addicted to the cortisol and just all of these things that our body produces. The words are leaving me right now, but we unconsciously recreate those things in our life in order to get a hit of those hormones. So we have no idea that we're doing it. I repeated my pattern in 2 abusive bosses over the next 2 years after I left. And then finally figured out what was happening and finally figured out how to change. And when it really hit me and I decided that I knew I needed to change was when I was so angry at one of my kids for his misbehavior that I was literally seeing red. And I picked him up and I went to toss him on his bed. And I said, something has to change. There is something in me that needs to be fixed. And I don't know what it is, but I'm going to figure it out. And when we open ourselves up to finding a solution, the solution will find us. So I found that solution and began working on it.
That is amazing. And I am writing down questions very quickly as you're talking. It's like, okay. Because this is very interesting for me. I have a past of abuse, of many kinds of different abuse in my childhood. And I've always kind of felt like I've repeated myself, but didn't know how to do it. Even in friendships, when some friendships broke off, it's like, oh, they act like this person who was in my life. Oh. And I thought I was crazy thinking that way. But hearing what you're saying, it's like, okay, so maybe I'm not crazy. Okay, maybe I'm crazy, but not crazy. So my first question for you is, why did you go into psychology? Because people don't go into psychology for, oh, I'm just going to go into psychology. No, there's a reason for it. Why did you go into psychology?
Well, it's actually social work.
Okay.
I have a bachelor's and master's degree in social work, and I went into that because I wanted to help people.
Why?
Like the classic response you get in every job interview. I want to help people.
Okay. But where did that come from?
I don't know. I just really loved children growing up. And I was the oldest. I wanted to take care of kids all the time. I was the babysitter and always had a kid on my hip growing up. And I wanted to help kids, and I wanted to be a foster parent and adopt kids and just rescue all the kids.
Why did you want to rescue the kids?
I really don't know. I had a really good childhood growing up. So it's nothing traumatic in my childhood that I can remember. I just loved kids.
Because there's always, I'm like that.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I test my Enneagram, it's like, you are an Enneagram 2 hardcore. And so when people are like, I want to help, I'm like, okay, why do you want to help? Because there's always there's either one or two things that I found. And I don't have a degree in social work or psychology, but there's one or two things that I found. It's either people have just seen other people be amazing and helping, or their heart breaks for people who are hurting, or they were broken and they want to help other people who weren't broken. So it's very interesting to see that dynamic play out. I have some interesting questions here of things that I have seen on Facebook, things that I have heard, things that I've said myself. My first one is, can someone not have narcissistic personality disorder and still be a narcissist?
Yes. Yeah, I believe so, because we are so conditioned in our society these days to be a narcissist. And there's a fine line we walk, right? Like, we have to take care of ourselves, and we have to believe in ourselves and trust ourselves and have all of these things. but we also have to have compassion for others. And a narcissist doesn't have the compassion for others or the ability to care about others. And that really is being conditioned out of us in our society through the violent movies that we watch, the violent video games that our kids play day in and day out. We just begin to see other people as objects and not the amazing human being that is the only person that is them.
You're speaking my language. I'm feeling very validated now for things that I have said over the years, and I need that. Thank you. I saw on Facebook a post where a person said, we need to stop calling our ex-boyfriends or ex-husbands toxics or narcissists just because we're no longer with them. That people are just throwing this word around. You're a narcissist or you're toxic or all of these things. Is there validity in what they're saying?
A little bit, yes. I think that we have forgotten how to have relationships. And we use the word toxic too much because we don't know how to have relationships. And so there's toxic relationships and there's narcissists. And I would say my ex was definitely a narcissistic sociopath. He did not care what anybody else thought. He didn't think about anybody else. And he was constantly lying to anyone and everyone about anything. It didn't matter. It just didn't make sense to me. But what I'm trying to say is with relationships, they can very quickly become toxic because we have two personalities trying to mend together to have a relationship, right? And we let our own perception of the way things are going move it in another direction towards toxicity. Whereas if we can stop and say, what are my own thoughts and feelings here? How am I contributing to this? And not blaming the victim. Definitely not blaming the victim here, because I spent 9 years working on this in my own relationship. Where am I causing the problem here? And if it comes down to the point where your thoughts are good, your intentions are good, your feelings are good, but things are constantly going in a bad direction, then you know that is definitely toxic, and it's not going to change just from you changing your thoughts and your feelings and your perceptions of things. I hope that makes sense.
It does. It does. I had mentioned that I grew up kind of in an abusive environment of several different kinds of abuse. And so my oldest daughter, she and I have done a lot of talking about it. I've been very open and honest about the things that have happened to me. And I told her, I said, you need to be mentally and emotionally healthy, or you could very likely repeat my mistakes. And I was going to say, is this true? But you just said, so I'm assuming
yes. That is exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about relationships becoming toxic. It's because we have two imperfect people coming together. And if those two imperfect people aren't conscious of their own thoughts and patterns, and they're not healthy within themselves, that's how they become toxic.
So what if one person, what if they both weren't healthy? One person's getting healthy, the other one isn't moving. What kind of dynamic are you creating there?
That's how mine was, because I said I was working on myself for 9 years. And so I was constantly working on improving myself, and just felt like anything I shared wasn't resonating, wasn't being implemented or thought about. And I prayed and prayed and prayed that he would be healed. And it just wasn't in our story that would happen. And so I don't condone divorce. I don't want anyone to have to go through divorce,
Right.
but you also don't deserve to live in a situation where you aren't being respected and cared for on a daily basis. And that's really what finally made me leave. Was I have 3 kids in the home, and I was teaching my daughter that it was okay to be treated that way by a man. I was teaching my sons that it was okay to treat women the way that I was being treated. And the day that I realized that, I said, no more. I am done. I'm not doing this anymore. My kids need to know that this is not okay, and they need to learn a better way.
You guys couldn't see me, but I'm like, yes, because I didn't want to interrupt you. I was like, yes. I have told people that sort of thing, and I felt like I was just spewing stuff because I didn't have the background. I don't have the degree. I don't have all the other things that would make it something that I could stand on. But to hear someone who has a degree, who has the experience of dealing with other people, and then your own story, to hear you say that, I'm like, yes, once again, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
There's a reason for it.
Well, and once I left, I saw those behaviors in my kids for the first time. When I was in it and surrounded by it every day, it wasn't so obvious. But when I left, I saw it, and I had to begin teaching my kids that was not okay, and teaching them new behaviors and new ways to think and new ways to deal with everything that they were going through, so that they wouldn't repeat those behaviors either.
Yes. It's kind of like you are breaking the cycle.
Yes.
Breaking the cycle. It's like, no, it will not happen. Whatever happened, it's not going past here. And to build that wall, to build that high wall or dam, I guess, like a bridge dam, that's hard. To be the one to do that, because you have people going against you, saying, oh, no, you're wrong. This was great. And, you just looked at it the wrong way, or you just took things the wrong way. I have somebody in my life who said, you intentionally take everything I say the wrong way.
Maybe, but if I'm examining my own thoughts, then maybe you're just saying it the wrong way.
Well, that kind of leads into my next question. It caused me to not trust myself.
Yes.
I learned about the term gaslighting. And how you're intentionally taking things the wrong way, or I don't remember that. You're making that up to make me look bad. Those kinds of things. I consider that kind of thing personally toxic.
Definitely.
So those are the kinds of things that can cause someone to end up having to struggle with confidence, to struggle with believing in themselves, to the point of even everyday things that people do. You're just kind of like, I don't believe that I can do that. It got so bad for me at one point, I didn't even feel confident decorating my house myself for the holidays. So is that the kind of thing that you're kind of talking about here? Is that kind of abuse that women deal with?
Yeah. And I would say that's 100% true. I got to the point where I was actually recording conversations because I have a problem with memory anyway. But then he would say that things didn't happen that had happened, and I'm like, what is going on here? Like, I like to say that, when we come out, we don't know up from down or front from back, and it's just a big cluster, what? And we have to figure out who we are again. We have to learn to trust ourselves again. to develop our own intuition so that we can then regrow our confidence to really get out there. And this is why I do what I do, because when you're in that and you don't trust yourself and you don't trust your intuition, then you can't possibly be everything that you were designed, called, and gifted to be. There's just no way. And when we have 50% of marriages ending in divorce, and when we have 1 in 4 women who have experienced domestic violence, that is a significant number of women who have been through this and who aren't fulfilling their purpose in this world. So just imagine if we can help all of those women heal and all of those women become everything that they were created to be, just how much better this world could be. How much better we could raise our children. How many more things these women will do in the world. It just astounds me to even think about it.
How do you fix that lack of, the confidence that goes away due to abuse? How does a woman fix that?
Well, I teach a process of gosh, it's several steps, but the way I like to explain it is, you've got a piece of wood, and this piece of wood is painted black, and you want to whitewash it. And if you just start putting whitewash on top of it, you can do 20, 30, 40 coats, and you're still going to see the black through it. But if you sand off the black paint and get a nice fresh piece of wood underneath, then start whitewashing it, it's going to eventually look white with a lot less coats. And so this process that I teach helps to eliminate not just stuff, all of our negative emotions and thoughts and feelings. It really helps to pluck them out of us so that when we start the positive thinking process and really implanting new good thoughts that support us, there's actually room for them to take root and grow, and not just sitting on top of rocks and then withering and dying away.
That makes a lot of sense. From what you're talking about, though, are you saying that you can't, I don't know if can't's the right word, regain your self-confidence unless you leave an abusive relationship?
No, definitely not. I wasn't strong enough to do it. I really needed to get out of it, mostly for the kids, but also for myself. But I know some people who stay in, and they are still able to work on themselves and grow and flourish. For me, it just wasn't possible.
Because I know some of my listeners have dealt with or are still in that kind of relationship, to the point of everything is better if you're happy. Our family only works well if you're happy. If you're not having a good day, then it ruins everybody else's day. Those kind of comments, or how everything is, when the abusive spouse is having a bad day, it becomes the other spouse's fault.
Oh yeah. I didn't want to live in that anymore. It just wasn't worth it to me.
It's very, very difficult. So let's start getting into the hard part of it, of how the two are tied, growing up in an abusive environment and reproducing that, because there is a lot of that out there. There is a lot of that out there. I I have a friend who has a daughter, and my friend's husband told her, "Why did you raise our daughter to hate men?" And she said, "I didn't need to. She just looked around her." And so that's an abusive environment. I know her husband. I know what kind of person he is. And so their daughter she's like, "Yeah, I don't want to date. I don't want to date. I don't want anything to do with it." She cannot stand men. Her husband, her dad, her brothers. It's very, very difficult. So how is that all tied to, I guess, reproducing that in your life as an adult? And what is the way to stop that from happening?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I said was, I repeated my pattern in 2 abusive bosses. I also had 2 dating relationships after that where I didn't recognize the manipulation right away. So it really comes down to eliminating all of the negative thoughts and emotions within us, because that's what keeps us addicted to those chemicals and the hormones that our body's producing, that causes us to recreate those patterns subconsciously. And so, using this, it's called the rapid relief technique, to dive into all of those things that we're thinking instead of stuffing them, because that's what we did for the whole time we're in an abusive relationship. Because if you have an emotion, then it means they're possibly going to have a stronger emotion and end up abusing you. So you learn not to show your emotions, you learn to stuff your emotions. And so using the rapid relief technique to get these emotions out, to really dive into what are all these thoughts that I'm having and eliminating them, that is what helps break the pattern and keeps us from repeating those cycles later in life.
Wow, that is big. There are a lot of people I know who could use that. Who could use to, because like I said, I had found myself repeating the relationship, whether it was in a friend, that kind of thing. And when the friendship breaks off and you look away, kind of going, "Oh, they acted like so and so who used to do those kinds of things." Mm-hmm. You mentioned being in the picture and stepping out. Whoa, wait a minute here. I don't know what to say here. It's we've almost created an epidemic. I know from somebody else that I interviewed that there are places in the world where the divorce rate's about the same as the US, but the adultery rate is like 70%.
Wow.
70% of the spouses cheat, especially men cheating on women when their wives are pregnant.
Jeez.
Yeah. It's a huge number, and it's a real problem, and it almost makes people afraid. Like my friend's daughter, who's afraid. She's afraid of dating. She's afraid of getting married. She's afraid of life.
Mm-hmm.
What would you tell her daughter?
They can't live out of fear. Our base emotion is supposed to be love. And if you're a Christian and you think about it, like all through the Bible, it says God is love and he created us in his image. And our base emotion that we're supposed to live out of every single moment of every single day is love. And we can't live out of love if we're experiencing fear. So we have to start eliminating, really learning how to process those lower vibrational emotions that come up that don't support us and don't help us to feel love. Because if we don't feel love, we can't give love and we can't receive love.
So they shut themselves off from love, period. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, and if you don't love yourself, if you don't experience love within yourself, you can't love anyone else, can't give love, and you also can't receive love in the way that it's meant to be received.
Now, her mom, I know she loves her children. She doesn't love herself a lot, but I know she loves her children. And so that concept of you know, unless you, that way you can't love people. I mean, one of the things that John Maxwell says is that you can't add value to people unless you see value in yourself. And when I first started training under the John Maxwell team, I didn't see a lot of value in myself.
Mm-hmm.
But if you ask my children, they're like, Mom, you've been loving us and adding value to us since we were little. How do you deal with that dichotomy? What am I missing here?
It's a different kind of love. It's a different kind of value when you don't truly love yourself. Because when you truly love yourself and you have experienced that, it's an unconditional love. And it's really hard to explain until you feel it. It's a subtle difference, but it makes all the difference in the world.
She had a relative who she mentioned unconditionally loved her.
Mm-hmm.
But then the more I've talked to her, the more I'm like, I don't know if it's quite there. So there's still a piece of her you're saying that's missing.
Yeah.
Wow. So what do you do? Because I know my friend is not the only one. And no. You're sitting there in the middle of it, in your picture, and you can't see beyond it. How do they step out of the picture? How do they step out of the frame and start seeing things?
Yeah, starting to pay attention to these things around you, listening to self-development stuff really opens your eyes to what's going on, to what you're missing, to what things could be.
Where should they start? Where would you recommend they start? Because there's lots of self-development. There's lots of, everywhere you turn around, there's this coach or that coach or this coach or that coach or this coach certification program or this person writing a book. There's all kinds of books out there. Where would you recommend they start?
Well, I have a free masterclass that they can take called Breakthrough. Well, I have two, but this one is coming up on January 18th. I don't know when this episode is going to air, but the two are always available on my website. One's called Breakthrough, one is called Heal. I teach the same concepts in each one, just with a different focus. And they're absolutely free. I teach you the rapid relief technique. I teach you the thought model. And that is what helps you start diving into seeing that things can be different, into really learning how to process emotions, how to eliminate those lower vibrational emotions when they come up instead of stuffing them, and then putting your thoughts on the things above, like the Bible instructs us to do.
Yes, definitely. That is good to know. We'll make sure the links for those are in the description so everybody can find out how to join the classes and where to go.
Awesome.
I'm interested. I know I have several people personally who I'm going to recommend sending them to this. Because even if you have a good childhood.
Mm-hmm.
People are like, I had a great childhood. There was no problems. There was no dysfunction. Everything was great. I saw a reel when I have trouble sleeping at night. I end up watching Instagram reels. We need to shut the internet off so I can get some more sleep. But they were talking about this psychologist was talking about that you could still have trauma even though you had a great childhood because of expectations not met.
Yeah.
So what is that and what are they talking about?
Well, I like to say, our expectations kind of set us up for failure. Like, it's good to have goals and aspirations that you're going for, but when you expect other people to behave in a certain way, you're almost always going to be let down. So we have to just drop our expectations of how other people are going to, what they're going to say, think, and do, because we can't control other people's behavior.
Well, that's great as an adult, but these are kids. And that takes things to a whole other level. I mean, I've had in the past couple of weeks conversations with my kids, and they're like, oh, but this is what happened. And I'm up here going, you were 4. No, that's not what happened. Oh, but I know for a fact I was there. And I'm like, you were 4.
Yeah.
And the way we process things as an adult and the way we process things as a little kid. I mean, one of the things that came up was I have this thing right before dinner. Do not ask me for junk food because the answer is no.
Right.
But if you came and asked me, can I have an apple or can I have some vegetables? I will say yes. Even if dinner's going to be ready in 5 minutes, I'm going to give you vegetables or fruit because it's good for you. It's good for you. And so one of my oldest kids, because my oldest 2 kids are 23 and 22. And then I have a 17-year-old and a 16. They're like, you never did that for us. You would never have given us anything. And I'm like, yes, I did. This is the way I've been doing it for the entire time. No. You let them get away with so much. And I'm looking at my husband. He's like, I don't know what they're talking about because I've always been that way.
Wow.
I know you're hungry. Here, have a couple of baby carrots. Then it'll be ready in about 10 minutes. Have a couple of baby carrots. It'll tide you over, and then you can have dinner. Because whether they eat the vegetables right before dinner or during dinner, doesn't matter. They eat vegetables. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
But their memory is skewed. So as a child, they're going to have expectations. Maybe it's because of the things they watched on TV. Maybe it's because of the way their friends' parents did things.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it was their skewed perception of the way things were or should have been. So you're an adult now. You have those skewed, twisted way of looking at things. And even my adult children were like, as a kid, you were the worst mom on the planet. And as an adult, you're kind of like, okay, I get it why you did, but you're still the worst mom on the planet at times. How do you deal with that? Because that itself, like what they were saying, that causes trauma. And so we're getting back into rebuilding that whole, it sets them up to have trouble in life as adults.
I think, what you're doing, it's just having those conversations with them. Like, no, your perception is definitely not right. This is how it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Just having those open conversations. I think the biggest thing we can do as parents is to learn the difference between shame and guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Those little things about how things happen. We're always going to have those misconceptions about how things were. But as long as we really know the difference between shame and guilt, which shame is, I am wrong. Guilt is I did something wrong. Again, it's subtle, but it's profound. And it's the difference between saying you're a bad boy or you shouldn't have done that. That was a really bad thing to do. And it's internalized totally differently, those two concepts. So as long as we can learn the difference between shame and guilt, and we can have those conversations with our children and really be open and honest with them, even when we're experiencing it, then we're not going to raise bad kids, and we're not going to totally screw them up.
I'm like, thank you, God, for the moments to remind me I've not totally screwed up my kids. Speaking of shame, that is a big thing for me, because I think even in the work you deal with, there's a lot of shame that's wrapped up into it, because like I had mentioned, you intentionally look at things the wrong way. You intentionally take that's building shame into me. And some of the hardest books I've ever read were written by Brene Brown.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Dealing with shame. And I have a friend who's like, oh, I could just rip through those books, and I'm over here going, I can read maybe a chapter, and then I have to spend a week digesting everything that I just read. She's so good, and it's such a hard thing to deal with. And I think that's where, when I said earlier, this is going to be hard, I kind of felt like that's where we were going to go. So, though part of me is like, I don't want to talk about shame. I don't want to talk about shame. Let's kind of go into that. I've learned that if I don't want to go there, that's God's way of saying, oh, you're going there. I'm like, no, right. I want to Jacob fight you. And he's like, oh no, I'm going to win. We're going there. So let's kind of deep dive into how shame affects all of this, because I think that is in my opinion, the worst cycle to pass on to other people. And even as a parent, when my kids were saying, you were the worst mom ever, I had to fight that, because that is a label. You are the worst mom ever. When my oldest two were little, I used to print off certificates for myself of the worst mom ever, for 1999 or 2000, whatever. I would print off certificates and put them in cheap frames that I got at Goodwill to remind myself I've won the award for the worst mom ever.
Oh my gosh. That's terrible.
I was full on sarcastic at that point in my life, hoping that it would help me feel better about myself. And it didn't help. I'm just telling you, if you're listening, don't do it. It didn't help.
No.
So shame is, I feel like shame is like the lowest vibration we can have, the lowest emotion that we can have. And I'm probably not if I was the only person who was dealing with shame, Brene would not have written so many books about it.
Oh no, it's rampant in our society right now.
And then there's whole cultures, like the Asian culture is built on shame. Where it would be better for you to kill yourself than to deal with the shame of your actions. And so I'm pretty sure you probably deal with a lot of shame in the work that you do. So what exactly, how would you describe shame in a way that it's kind of like, okay, I get it, to the person that you're talking to?
So for women, it is, shame comes in the form of judgment. So we get out of the abusive relationship, and then we shame ourselves for being in it for 9 years. I should have left sooner. It's also shoulding all over yourself. I should have left sooner. I should have done blah, blah, blah. I should have done this. I should have done that. It is saying, I need to lose weight. I'm going to eat healthy. And you eat healthy for 99% of the day. And then you have one unhealthy snack and you berate yourself afterwards. Like, I'm so stupid. I can't believe I did that. Why in the world did I just ruin my whole day of good eating? Like all of that is shame. And it compounds the problem, right? Like we didn't just experience the abusive relationship. Now we are abusing ourselves for staying in it too long. And so we're compounding the problem. So the first part of all of this work is really stopping doing that to ourselves, which is what the rapid relief technique is, diving into our own thoughts, our own feelings, so that we can stop shaming ourselves.
Does shame mostly come from ourselves or does it come from others?
It mostly comes from ourselves. Because a lot of times other people will say something and we give it a totally different meaning.
Wow. How is you've mentioned the rapid relief technique a couple of times. How is that different from CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, for those who don't know?
I'm not familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy, so I can't really answer that.
What I understand of it is it's like kind of like capturing your thought. Is it true? If it's not true, why isn't it true? And then changing the story in your head to give it a truth.
So rapid relief technique, you are giving a voice to all the things you want to say but would never say to anyone else. It's kind of like if you try to hide something, it just grows and grows and grows and grows. It's like, no, don't stop thinking that, stop thinking that, stop thinking that. And it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. But when you give a voice to it and you actually speak it and get it out of you, then it's released.
Mm-hmm.
It's like shining light into the dark area.
You're recommending then that we give voice to all of our emotions, even the ugly ones, then?
In a healthy, private way. Not to others.
I have a daily worksheet that I do that I created for myself, and it says, what am I feeling today? And I write down, what am I feeling? Whatever it is. And then underneath of it, I write down, what do I need? What do I need that helps me deal with that? And I had a friend of mine say, oh, you shouldn't put down your bad feelings, only your good feelings. And it's like, but sometimes I'm angry and sometimes I'm tired and sometimes I'm just not feeling like a nice person today. Is it healthy to acknowledge all of those feelings?
Definitely, 100%.
Okay. That is good to know. I appreciate that. I always try to throw out a hard question, but I think we've kind of like gone through a lot of really, really hard things here. I guess it comes down to, for the woman who knows what's going on and she's staying anyway, and she's saying, oh, I'm staying for the kids, or I'm staying for because he makes all the money and I'm a stay-at-home mom and I don't have anything. I've been a stay-at-home mom for 15, 20 years. I don't have a college education. I don't have anything.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to her?
You are worth having a good life. You are valuable, you are worthy, and you were made to do amazing things. And if you could do it in that environment, that's great. If you can't and you aren't being your full, true, authentic self, God's got your back and he will help you every step of the way, just like he helped me every step of the way. I was a stay-at-home mom for 5.5 years before I left my ex-husband. And I had a job before I left but it was still a struggle. And I was driving Uber and Lyft, but every minute of the way, I was taken care of and things just fell into place. So only you can know what's right in your life, in your situation. Only you can know if you need to leave. So trust the voice in your head that says, I need to stay or I need to leave. And once you've picked one of those, go all in with it and just become everything that you were designed, called, and gifted to be in whichever choice you choose. Stop riding the fence.
Oh, there it goes. There's like, all nice and comforting. There's like, bam, wake up. Wake up. Wake up. You have a life to live. Thank you so much for your time today, Misty. I really appreciate it. And I think this is something that, like I said at the beginning, and I still think it's hard. This is hard because we get into shame, and shame is hard, and abuse is hard, and nobody walks into a marriage thinking, oh, I'll stay married, for a year or two, and then I'm ready to divorce this person. People get married thinking this is my partner for the rest of my life. And so having those kinds of things come up, they kind of blindside you. And to have someone speak life into them like you've done, and to be willing to help them makes all the difference in the world. So thank you for speaking life into us today, and thank you for your time. That is all I have for you guys today, and I will see you next week. Bye.